No one knows what the future holds, but if a new house is in your future, I can help from a safe distance. I'm Nick Acosta, your downtown expert, and I'm hosting safe and sanitary open houses. Nothing is different except for temperature checks at the door and masks are required. But it still smells like there are fresh baked cookies in the oven. So come on by one of my safe and sanitary open houses, and I'll say welcome home from 6 feet away.
This is Home2All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast with your host, Nicholas Acosta. Nick sits down with guests to talk about real estate and how it works. Reach him at downtown.expert on Facebook and Instagram, or his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Enjoy the episode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Friday, July 2nd, 2021, with the 4th of July weekend upon us. Coming up this weekend, this is Home2All, all-inclusive real estate podcast. I've got my guest on here and sponsor, Mike Tonsetic at Blanchard Insurance. Mike, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me, Nick.
Just so we can talk about this first, since this was just officially announced, maybe just like 20 minutes or 15 minutes before the podcast, how it's Hurricane Elsa now that's headed toward the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, that was pretty quick. It seems like that storm that was headed towards the Carolinas was the last thing I heard of, and then this thing just came out of nowhere, barreling towards Florida and the Panhandle. So it's going to be very interesting over the next 72 hours to see what track this takes and what severity it takes.
Most definitely. So in terms of real estate, because we're in real estate, so we know at Monday, July 5th, because the holiday, July 4th, falls on a Sunday. Monday is a federal holiday or federal recognized holiday, and the banks are closed. So that's already one issue that real estate agents are facing for Monday if they already had scheduled closings, that the loans won't fund. But now how does this impact this hurricane, now that it's named a hurricane? How does that impact the insurance side of the closings as well?
They'll start to shut down, and I would assume they're going to probably start doing very quickly. One of the larger insurance companies who does a lot of coastal risks, and they're all over Florida. They have been for the past couple decades. They've already shut down, and usually when you start to see companies like that, the kind of the larger ones and who have a lot of risk and who tend to keep their underwriting a little more liberal than a lot of other companies, when they start shutting down, it's kind of alarming. Because usually the first to always shut down is Citizens. So the state has their box. It's certain coordinates outside of Florida that once the storm crosses that threshold, they automatically shut down. And then that's usually, everybody kind of watches Citizens first to find out what they're going to do. And then it used to be, hey, back, in the early 2000s, once anybody got inside that box, I mean, every insurance company known to man in Florida operating basically shut down. Over the years, as technology's gotten better to analyze risk and where these storms are headed and what the predictable damage is going to be, a lot of them kind of have stayed open. I mean, you would find, like in this case, you might find a company who has a lot of risk up in Jacksonville staying open, or they may just keep open certain areas and start shutting down county by county. But with everything else that's going on with all this legislation and reform that's been handed down from the state of Florida, all the hail fraud, everything else, litigation going on, and, unfortunately, condos collapsing, down in Miami, you're going to start seeing these companies shut down, all of them, pretty instantaneously. And they're not going to reopen until this storm is good and well past, probably up to somewhere like South Carolina.
Yeah, and speaking of which, unfortunately, I guess that also delays this weather coming up is going to delay more of the efforts to look for people that were lost in the rubble or the collapse of that building.
Yeah, and that's just a horrible, unfortunate story that nobody really knows the outcome of that, and that could take years in regards to finding out what happened, the litigation involved. There's I've been kind of trying to keep up with it as much as possible. And I mean, it's a sad thing. We actually had a prospective client who was buying a unit. I think it was a couple doors down in another building and backed out of it the next day as soon as they saw that. My opinion on it, it could be a number of things. It could be faulty engineering. It could be work that was being done on the building. And in Florida, I mean, it's no secret. I mean, everybody knows this. I mean, construction efforts in Florida are not always the best. They never have been. And since I've lived here since the early 90s, I mean, I've seen everything over the years. And it could be, just construction defects and poor quality construction, which brings into play, I mean, HOA boards. That's why it's very important that they get insured, because they don't think things like this could possibly happen, but they do. And then, engineers being held liable, city, county held liable, everything, really comes into play. So it's going to be an interesting, and most importantly, the lives lost, and hearts, and prayers go out to them and their families. But it's going to be interesting to see how this develops over the next couple of years.
Most definitely, and I'm sure as in the real estate industry, when I go to show condos, or my colleagues in the business show condos, I'm sure now that not unfortunately, but the unfortunate thing is what happened to the people. Material stuff can be replaced, but human life is valuable, more valuable than materials. And what I would say is, probably what will happen is real estate clients that want to put in an offer on a condo in our Florida downtowns or in our cities and towns and the beaches, that will probably be the first question they ask us: do we know if this building's safe or not to move into?
Yeah,
what happened.
Yeah, I see a lot of research being done, even going back, maybe possibly a couple decades, where buyers are going to want to look through the HOA, through the minutes every year, and take a look through the financials and say, hey, was anything ever brought up with construction issues on this building before that weren't even taken care of? And unfortunately, I've been involved sat on HOA boards and commercial boards as well, where things have not been taken care of properly. And I mean, not at this magnitude. I'm not talking, 23, story high rise or whatever it is, but I'm talking, maybe like a 3-story commercial condominium building here in Central Florida, or a smaller HOA of maybe 100 units. And we've seen, like, on some of them, especially on the commercial properties, investors come in and do what they want and don't, do permitting. And then sometimes the properties have switched hands, 3 or 4 times. And unfortunately, back in 2006, we bought into a commercial condo, bought a couple of units. And as we went along, we found out that the developer had been involved with Lou Pearlman and a bunch of his projects, wound up in federal prison. And to this day, I still sit on the board, and every year it seems we find something new that nobody pulled a permit on or pulled a code on. And, the fire marshal's coming in, fire inspector threatening to shut down the entire building, and it's constant. And then you just think about that, and that's one small building. You're just thinking, like, God, how much of this actually goes on? And sometimes, I mean, if you just have the best person to talk to is actually some of the guys who work at the fire sprinkler inspection companies, and ask them what they've seen over the years. Because I've talked to a bunch of them. I have a couple of friends who do that for a living, and they can tell you horror stories. But to your accord, yes, I believe there's going to be a lot more due diligence when people looking at condos, and rightfully so. I mean, that's the other thing we see, and I'm sure you see on all the time, is like people buying the condos, and they don't realize that there's, there was a meeting 6 months ago where they're going to put on a $300,000 roof or $1 million roof. And then guess what? Everybody's being hit with assessments. I mean, we have a lot of clients who've been hit with these special loss assessments over the past few years, ranging anywhere between, $1,000 up to $20,000, $30,000, $50,000. There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you can refuse to pay it, and they'll put a lien on your property. And then that's why insurance companies have really limited coverage on that over the years. I mean, you're lucky in Florida now if you can buy $5,000 worth of coverage anymore on loss assessments.
Most definitely, yeah, because the special assessments get tacked on top of your HOA when they add those in there. So sometimes I see that all the time with listings on condos in Pinellas County, and I know in Orlando too, that you'll see there's an HOA amount of like $800, but then there's an assessment of $1,300 on top of it. And then on top of that, if you have a mortgage on it, so that all gets factored into your mortgage when you have your payments. Yeah,
absolutely. And then one of the things to look at, even if you're going to buy a residential condo in one of these skyscrapers, is to take a look at the commercial insurance, because a lot of people disregard it and they go, that's all taken care of. I just want to look at my own individual unit owner's insurance. But the thing is, you got to take a look at it and question, okay, well, do they have wind coverage? And what's the deductible on that? Because some of these policies may have, let's say it's insured, the building's insured for $10 million, and then they have a 10% deductible on top of that. Well, that's, a $1 million deductible. And guess what? You got to look at the HOA fees and do the math and say, well, if they're taking in $500 per person, per month, is that enough to pay $1 million deductible, or am I going to be stuck with this? Because in Florida, when it comes to special loss assessments, the board can pass the deductible amount down to the actual residents and owners. And then what they can also do on that is, if there's not enough coverage, let's say the roof, was, $10 million or the building was $1 million or whatever. If the true cost to fix the roof comes out to be $2 million, well, guess what? They're passing down another $1 million assessment on top of that. So it's really good. You kind of want to take a look at those coverages and make sure the deductibles aren't out of whack, the insurance coverage is not out of whack, because again, it's going to affect you indirectly.
I can agree more on that. So Mike, during this hurricane season, or what's going on in Florida, are there any new things coming out? Maybe not regarding the hurricane, but in general in Florida, are there any insurance companies that are going to be going away, or is everything staying business as normal or usual?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We had two major developments over, one the other day, and one on the first of the month, and one about a couple of weeks ago that we kind of knew was coming. Number one, Gulfstream Insurance Company has gone, for what we know now, into receivership. And for our listeners out there who don't know what that is the company's no longer financially viable to remain in business in Florida. So the state has decided to put them into receivership and put them under what they call the Florida Insurance Guarantee Association. And what that means is you kind of go into a temporary pool with your homeowner's insurance. Now, in this case, it affected about 50,000 homeowners across the state of Florida. And I think they're going into the Florida Insurance Guarantee Association. So there is insurance coverage. It basically covers the gap between then and then the company being taken over by another company, being taken over by Citizens, or the client obviously can choose to go off and get their own insurance. If people do get affected by this, I wouldn't panic. I would say there's a sense of urgency since we are in hurricane season, and the last thing you kind of want to do is, in my opinion, is be with Citizens or be inside the FIGA, or the Florida Insurance Guarantee Association, because guess what? You have coverage, but you're going to be in a long line of people getting paid out on a claim, and you're just going to be kind of like a lost needle in the haystack there, so to speak. So what you want to do is move as quick as possible. Does this happen? Yeah. We were having this conversation this morning in my office, me and Jamie. We've seen this happen like at least 20 times with 20 different companies in Florida. So it's nothing new. Expect more of this to happen. And again, the Florida consumer should know not to panic. Just get it taken care of sooner than later, but not to panic, because there's always coverage there. The other major development was Universal Property and Casualty Insurance Company, who I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with in Florida just because of the mere size and how long they've been around. And they've been around as long as I've been in the business, which is a pretty long time. They decided to close in Central Florida on effective July 1st. They have about $1.5 billion in assets, which makes them really the size of a national. They give you kind of an indication. You're getting to a size of a company that MetLife was, or a company around that size. So like the size of a national carrier, but pretty much domiciled in the state of Florida. Now, Universal, it's not anything bad. You got to look at the market right now. They have had very liberal underwriting over the years. They were accepting the older roofs. They've been in business for so long. They insure coastal properties. They insure condos. They actually call them the condo kings because probably every other condo you see in Florida is probably insured by them. Now, they made a lot of smart moves over the years where a lot of carriers, like let's say, for example, your State Farm or your USAA or your Allstate or whatnot, they'll have one insurance company for basically the whole other 49 states, and even Progressive to a degree. I mean, Progressive really came into Florida and bought American Strategic Insurance Company to offer homeowners insurance. So everything was kind of separated from the state of Florida because I knew Florida is a nightmare. Well, what Universal did was kind of use the same strategy, but do it in reverse, where they actually operate in about 20 different states. Not as big as Florida by any means. Florida is their biggest market whatsoever, but they did that in some of these non-volatile states like Illinois or Ohio or whatnot, so they could balance kind of out the books because they knew they're going to get hit hard in Florida. And I mean, they even insure in Hawaii. But if it was January 1st, I don't see them making this move. What I see them making this move for is we're getting into hurricane season. Even if a hurricane doesn't hit, they're scared to death of the roofing industry getting out there and saying, hey, wait a minute, there was a hailstorm this afternoon, and with all the rain and everything we else had, they think that's exponentially. Number two is every agent in Florida represents Universal Property and Casualty. And I'm talking even State Farm agents, Allstate agents, Farmers agents, everybody represents them. So if you have that many agents writing business through one company at a time, and I'll give you a real indication, I would say probably 40% of the applications over the last 6 months that have gone in for new homeowners insurance have been through Universal Property and Casualty. So take that, times that by maybe probably 50,000 agents in the state of Florida. Even though they are the biggest insurance company by far, they can only take so much. And then it kind of tips the scale in where guess what? A category 5 hurricane hits. Do they get into financial trouble? Yes. So what they've done is they've really shut down the I-4 corridor. So I'm talking Seminole, Orange, Osceola, Volusia County, Hillsborough, and all that. They're probably going to stay open in the Jacksonville area, but South Florida in the middle of the state right now, they're closed down. And that's just one more big carrier that has decided that Central Florida is not worth their time right now. But as disclaimer, just to tell everybody out there, if you're with the company, you're not getting non-renewed, you're not getting canceled, business is normal, and you should feel safe that you are with the largest insurance company because they have the most money to pay out claims. They're not like a Gulfstream who's on the verge of going out. So again, don't panic. You're in a good place. It's just they're not taking on any new clients, and existing clients should be thankful for that and just basically say, good, you're not taking on any more risk that you can't handle, us as your clients, which is a very good thing.
No, that's awesome. So speaking of insurance, so kind of a sidetrack, but we're both familiar with the personal injury, and 10 years ago, big insurance carriers, for example, like Progressive, we were excited when personal injury was going to sunset. But of course, as we talked about one other time on the podcast, how it's a different animal today because Florida has grown significantly and grows every single day significantly compared to 10 years ago. Have we heard any updates on the personal injury sunset expected date or anything changed with that?
From what I've heard in all reports is the PIP is not getting sunsetted. From what I understand is the bill went to DeSantis' desk. He had a certain amount of time to sign it to reform it, and he reformed it. It didn't even take overnight. I mean, he just signed off. He didn't want the change. And I think the attorneys, the entire legal industry is happy. I think the insurance industry is happy that it's going to be business as normal. Because to be honest, I mean, there's so much else going on with the condo collapse, getting into hurricane season, with the economy, with COVID. If they were going to sunset it, it would be the worst possible time to do it. So for number one, I'm happy about it. It would have opened up Pandora's box, and I can't imagine what would have came out of it. So I'm kind of happy about it, to be honest.
No, me too. Well, when I was in the insurance world 10 years ago, it was going to be a good thing. But like you said, 10 years later, it's a whole different situation, especially what's going on in the world around us. And especially unfortunately, with the condo collapse in Florida. But it would be too crazy, especially when we're continuing to grow as a state.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's that 10 years ago, we weren't as busy as we are today. So, yeah, Mike, so anything else? So like with this hurricane, so just to, I guess, contrast to the past, like I knew when I was in the auto insurance industry and there was a hurricane in the Gulf or a named storm, does this affect auto policies as well? Like, because, cars can get flooded out if there's a flood or rising water in the Gulf states. I mean, not just Florida, but like Mississippi, Louisiana. And do they put a stop on writing auto policies during a hurricane or no?
Yes and no. They don't actually stop writing the business, but they will refuse once the hurricane gets close enough. And it's usually it's got to be a lot closer than for the homeowners insurance companies. So like, for example, like if the homeowners front lines, and all these other companies are starting to shut down on the home side, auto insurance will probably shut down county by county, if not the entire state, but they'll probably wait till it gets a little closer to Florida and then they'll start shutting down. And their biggest exposures are obviously in coastal counties because of flooding, like you said. So they'll sell the liability, they'll sell everything. What they will choose to omit is usually the comprehensive coverage is where the flooding falls under, or a tree falling on a car in a driveway. So they will stop offering that coverage. So if you're buying a car over July 4th weekend, like I know so many people are, you can still close on the car and buy away. You may not be able to get comprehensive coverage. And a lot of the time they'll still even sell you the collision coverage. But what you would want to do is you could still buy the car, get it insured. And people got to remember that too, just because you're buying a new car, new cars are covered on auto insurance policies, depending on the company, for usually 15 or 30 days without even reporting it to the insurance company. So that comprehensive coverage will still transition over if it's replacing a car. But if you're going out and buying, you don't have auto insurance, you're buying your car for the first time, or now you're thinking about, well, should I get comprehensive and collision coverage because I've never had it before? Yes, you probably want to get it before the storm is, because they will restrict the comprehensive coverage in Florida, and they will probably do it throughout the Southeast. I mean, it's not just here. They'll probably do it in Alabama, Louisiana, and even Georgia and the Carolinas.
Yeah, no, I mean, everybody who's listening or watching today, we know how it is. We're in Florida. We can't really completely predict where a storm goes. Obviously, we know that we get skeptical about the cone of error, or whatever you want to call it, spaghetti models, all those other things of tracking. Don't get caught up in the hype. I mean, be cautious, be alert of what's going on around you, pay attention to the news, but don't get too wrapped up into the news where you're kind of get overwhelmed. Because if you get overwhelmed, then you're going to probably worry about more than you should. But if you're prepared and you listen to the bulletins, then you should be fine. Don't you agree? Especially here in Florida.
Yeah, absolutely. We're both still around. I mean, we both through, all the storms. And I can tell you the worst one I was through was Charlie back in 2004, because everybody was totally unprepared for that. I mean, it came in on Punta Gorda and just ripped a barrel across the state. I mean, the thing was going about like 35, 40 miles an hour, like straight up I-4. And it was a very small Category 3 compact storm. I mean, it decimated, Orange and Seminole County. It just ripped through it. I mean, it literally like went right over here in Seminole County. And after that, I've kind of learned to, if you survive that, it's a good thing. And then you kind of learn how to live with it. The thing is, again, like what you said, is not to panic, not to run out. I used to do that the first couple times, run outs to Home Depot and take everything off the shelf and run to Walmart and Publix and get everything, and I thought I was survival man. But again, you're creating panic and stress for yourself, but you're doing it for every single person around you. And then leave too. I mean, I know wherever you were in St. Pete, if you're in those areas and if it's going to be bad, leave. I mean, it's not worth your safety and not worth your life, especially when it comes to flooding. Leave, come inland. I mean, you have insurance. It can replace all of those things. It can't replace yourself. So that's, really my advice to people.
No, I agree. Oh yeah. Well, Hurricane Charlie, what I remember, and those folks listening or watching, you may or may not remember this, but I'm sure you remember, Mike. They actually evacuated Pinellas County and the beaches and closed everything down. And guess what? Everybody went to Orlando, and the eye of the storm passed through Orlando, where everybody was staying. So,
yeah, I remember that. Everybody in Tampa was like completely happy. I mean, they literally didn't have anything. I mean, it was a little windy outside, and then just and it turned on a dime. I mean, it was incredible, and it came and was gone. And I mean, I remember going outside, with my wife at the time, and we were sitting there and looking around, and it looked like Beirut. I mean, trees were down everywhere, no power, and then that was the case for the next 2 weeks, unfortunately.
Nope, definitely. All right, Mike. Well, is there any? So before we wrap up today, is there any tips you want to give? Since Sunday is July 4th, and remember again, everybody, Monday, July 5th is an observed holiday for the government. Banks will be closed. If you have a closing for real estate, your funding won't happen until Tuesday because the banks are closed on Monday. So just remember that out there, because a lot of people forget when the holiday falls on the weekend. Sometimes the government recognizes it on the Monday after. Any safety tips because of fireworks, especially now with this is supposed to be like in St. Pete, I know, and I'm sure I don't know about Orlando, but in St. Pete, we're going to be having fireworks at the pier again. We didn't have it last year because of the pandemic. So more crowds of people will be out there, which can lead to more accidents and things like that.
Oh, absolutely.
What kind of tip do you have for anybody listening or watching about that this weekend?
Well, number one, be respectful of your neighbors and your animal lovers. I have 2 dogs myself. One is petrified of fireworks, so don't go crazy. Just for my dog's sake, please, because it seems to happen every single year. And by the way, if anybody goes on our Facebook page, we are running a charitable promotion this month where we are actually donate for every homeowner's insurance policy we write out of our own pockets. We are actually donating $10 to the Seminole County Animal Shelter. And our goal is to raise thousands of dollars this month for that. So it's a good thing. We hope to be very successful at it and continue to do it going forward. But again, what we're talking about is, number one, I'm a pet lover, be cognizant of the pets. Number two, don't go crazy. And the reason I say that is because I know everybody was locked up for COVID last year, around this time and whatnot. I don't even remember if they were selling fireworks, but pretend it's, 2019 or 2018. Don't just go out and buy 1 million fireworks and try to blow up the world, which I think unfortunately a lot of people are going to do. They're going to go out and take it to a whole new level. So my advice would be be respectful of everybody else and try to tone it down and keep it within relative means.
No, I completely agree, especially since they've been selling fireworks here since May. So, and don't forget, after this weekend, there'll be holiday decorations at your local stores coming next week. So
yeah, and I think there is actually more fireworks probably have come into the United States, because I've heard this too from a lot of our clients who are in the import-export business and are shipping from overseas. And I know the cost of shipping in containers has gone up something like 600%. And I actually have a client who's in the wrapping paper business, and they import wrapping paper for the holidays. And their cost per shipping container for one container, I think, is like it's way higher than 600%. So I think what has happened is we probably have a stockpile of firework ammunition like laying around because everybody wanted to import it to the United States before all these tariffs and everything else hit.
Well, and everybody wanted, that is crazy, and everybody wanted to know. I was going to be at the beach today, but because of inclement weather here, we've had off and on downpours from another tropical system, I'm assuming from the Gulf. Yep. And it hasn't, even though you look pretty set over there on your beach, Mike.
I'm trying to get myself in the mood for it over the holiday weekend, because it does. I mean, it seems like get into hurricane season, it's always a holiday season. I mean, some of these storms we've been having is crazy. Like that one we had, I think it was like last Tuesday. I had to pick somebody up from the airport, and it shut down the airport for like 5 hours. It was crazy.
No, I believe it will. We haven't had rain in a long time, so we're getting an abundance, which is good. All right, Mike. Well, you have a safe holiday weekend. Everybody out there listening, have a safe holiday weekend as well. And as always, we'll see you next week on Friday. I'll be back here Monday morning at 10:30 a.m. live to talk to somebody over at Cutco regarding real estate client gifts for closings. We'll be talking about that Monday morning at 10:30. And then, Mike, I'll see you next Friday, and have a good weekend, okay?
Sounds good. You too, Nick.
All right, guys. Well, everyone have a good weekend. Stay safe out there. Have fun. Enjoy your 4th of July. See you guys Monday.
This has been Home to All, an all-inclusive real estate podcast. Find Nick on Facebook and Instagram at downtown.expert, and also his website, www.downtown.expert, or call or text him at 407-508-8809. Thanks for listening.
Don't spend hours or days looking for your new home. Let a downtown Central Florida expert guide you. I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home. Being a Florida native, I know how exciting, stylish, and convenient the downtown lifestyle can be. From the nightlife scene in the heart of downtown to the natural beauty of Florida. I'm Nicholas Acosta, and I'm here to welcome you home.